Welcome back, Levelin Up Nation. This is
Good
your
work.
success strategist, and I am so excited today for Jenn Drummond. She is on the Levelin Up podcast. This is such a wonderful opportunity to really dial in what it means to be a peak speaker. Now, she is a world record holder. She has summited the 7-second highest peaks in the world on different continents. Absolutely an amazing speaker. Entrepreneur. She has a successful financial business, but one of the things you're going to love about her, she is an amazing storyteller. I'm so excited to have her on today. We met through the Final Percent Network over in Colorado, and I was so impressed with not only her stage presence, but the way that she is able to deliver value upon value. And this is such an exciting thing to have her on today. Welcome to the call, Jenn. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Well, let's start off here. I know you've got a great book called Break Proof, guys. If you haven't read it, definitely go check it out. It's phenomenal. But talk to us about your journey to become a peak speaker.
Yeah, honestly, it wasn't a thing that I stepped into by desire at first. I was on the news and somebody said, "Hey, you summited Everest. Would you come in and talk to my company about it?" And I said, "Sure, 100%." So I didn't realize how much work there was that goes into setting up a speech and writing it and all the different details. But I did that. And when I did it, I loved it. I loved the energy exchange. I loved being on stage. I loved the feedback from the audience. I'm like, okay, this is something I really enjoy. I need to do more of it.
That's beautiful. So you said that first initial experience, you didn't anticipate how much work it was. Now that you've been doing this a little while, that work, it starts to just feel fun for me. But what is it that you have found as far as a process to be able to develop those speeches and make sure that you're always delivering the very best that you can on stage?
Yeah, now that I have my stories dialed in, now it's more about who am I speaking for? What
Mm.
are they struggling with? What are they working on? What is their vision? And so that I can tailor that speech to that individual company or to that mastermind or to the message that they're trying to promote on stage. And so now it's fun because I don't have to focus on the story as much. Now it's more, how do I make this applicable to them so they walk away and they feel like the hero of the story?
Beautiful. That's a huge element of storytelling, is making sure that you are so comfortable with it that you don't have to be thinking about what's going on in the story. You have to think about, how do I make sure this is landing for my audience? It's translated well so that they can see this matters for me. And you tailor that message beautifully. And I've experienced that. Be able to hear you on stage is just phenomenal. So let's hear one of your favorite stories. I know you have a world record, and it was not a small undertaking to do that. This is years in the making, and you've talked about it all over. But what is the one story that you like to share the most about all of those different experiences that you've had?
Yeah. I think the universal story that I take consistently into my day to day from that experience is one of the experiences I had on Mount Everest.
Mhm.
So we are going up this section called the Lhotse Face. And
Mhm.
the Lhotse Face, for those that you're listening, is basically a 3,700-foot vertical stairmaster out in the elements where you're totally exposed.
Mm.
And you're at altitude, so this section can take 10 to 12 hours. And so when we were on this section, we started with really good weather and it was fine. And we were just kind of going through the task of one foot in front of the other. And then the weather changed. So when the weather changed, we had to change our goggles to be able to have depth perception of the snow. And so the lenses that would work in this lighting was either pink, orange, yellow, or white. And so most of the team had just like clear glasses, and I had pink ones because of course I'm a girl and I'm going to do pink anywhere I can.
Right.
And so I'm wearing these pink glasses, and as I'm hiking, it's starting to snow, but because of this pink lens, to me it looks like I'm in a cotton candy machine. And my imagination starts running, right? I'm like, I'm in a cotton candy machine. Now I'm thinking of cotton candy. I'm remembering the circus and playing Candyland with my kids. And in fact, the rope I'm tied to looks like a watermelon rind because of the lens. And so all of a sudden I'm singing like watermelon sugar high, and I'm having a really good time. Well, the alarms go off on our devices to remind us to stop, take a drink, get a little bite to eat. And so when this happened and I stopped, I bumped my glasses And all of a sudden, like all this warm, happy energy evaporated out of my body like a light switch. And I looked at my team members. I'm like, guys, we're in a gray, whiteout, horrible, yucky snowstorm. Why are we climbing right now? And my teammates all looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, Jenn, we've been in this storm for the last hour and a half. Like, where have you been? Why are you acting shocked? We're cold. We're miserable. We don't even know why we're here. And it made me realize, like, you could be on the same rope, like doing the same activity at the same time, achieving the same goal, and your experience can be entirely different because of the perspective that you have.
Yeah.
And so now whenever I'm in life and it's like hard or frustrating or I just don't know, I remind myself of that story and it's like, okay, wait, stop. Let's change our lens. And where can we find fun, joy, and like excitement again?
Oof, that's such a great example. I love the lens shift. That just like hit my feels. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. One of the things that I was really impressed with when I heard you as a panelist at the Final Percent Network was you talked about you advocating for yourself. You had this experience where you had to say, I want to get a hair dryer. And I was wondering if you would mind sharing that story because I thought it was such a brilliant example of advocating for yourself and standing up for what your needs are, even if your needs don't match what other people's needs are. So let's talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Okay. So climbing Everest, you're at Everest for a while and you need to shower at base camp, or please shower at base camp. Maybe you don't need to. We highly appreciate it if you do. And so when I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to shower at base camp and my hair's going to get wet and I have long blonde hair for those of you listening, not watching. I'm like, my hair's not going to dry. Like it will take 48 hours for it to
Mm,
dry naturally if I don't have a hair dryer. And then I'm going to get sick and I'm not going to be able to climb because of my hair and blah, 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 blah. So one of the questions I asked the companies that I was like going to vet to climb with was, hey, can I bring a hair dryer? And the first company said, no, just cut your hair. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going there. The second company was like, yeah, you can bring a hair dryer. It should be able to work to the generator like once a week. That should be fine. I'm like, okay, that's workable. And then the third company I called asked me, do you want a mirror? I'm like, oh my gosh. And they weren't like saying it sarcastically. I'm like, okay, if you can anticipate the fact that when I'm drying my hair, it's really nice to have a mirror, you're going to be able to anticipate my needs on the mountain. So that's the company I actually went to climb with. Well, in Utah, there's a company called Gold Zero, and they make solar powered batteries. And one of their batteries is strong enough to power a hairdryer. And so they gave me one to bring over there so that we wouldn't have to use the generator. And then I could leave it with the climbing company so they could use it in the future for cleaner energy. I'm like, okay, amazing. So I get to Everest, I shower, and I go to dry my hair in my tent, and it doesn't work. I'm like, why isn't it working? I'm like, oh, I bet it needs to be in the sun. Okay, so then I take the battery and I run it like outside my tent, and there's not a very long cord. So I'm like, my head's pushed up to the side of the tent. I'm trying to dry my hair and it's still not working. And
oh,
so the only spot that there's sun is like out in the middle where everybody is. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, no, I don't need to make a scene. No one needs to know that I'm drying my hair, blah, 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 blah. Well, my Sherpa comes over and he's like, okay, well, we are going to go up the mountain tomorrow. So he's like, you do need to dry your hair. I'm like, okay, I need to figure this out. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm drying my hair out in the open in front of everybody, which I was so embarrassed about. I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And I went out there, I dried my hair in the middle of base camp. Everybody saw it, instantly became Mountain Barbie, super embarrassed. But here's like where the story comes full circle. We climb Everest and all the teams meet back in Kathmandu to celebrate. And I had no less than 4 or 5 women come up to me and say thank you. And I looked at them, I'm like, what do you mean thank you? They're like, thank you for drying your hair at base camp, for having a need that you weren't trying to minimize or shrink or pretend that didn't exist. Because by you doing that, you gave me permission to stand up for myself and advocate for what I needed. I'm like, girl, if that's all that took, I'll bring a hairdryer to every mountain. I am here for it.
that's so good. This is such a great example of sometimes we don't realize the impact we'll make by doing our very best with what information we have and what resources we have, and just advocating for ourselves. If we are true to what we need and we're willing to do the hard work to say, this is what I need, just like you needed that hair dryer, we can make positive impact, whether we know that they were impacted or not. Sometimes you may say something like this, and as a speaker, someone that you don't get to meet will have a shift in their mindset that allows them to advocate for themselves, just like what those 4 people did for you. I love it. Now, Jenn, one of the things that I am always looking for as a speaker is that very unique story, the way that only you can tell it. What is a story that is uniquely Jenn that nobody else has? You're like, this is the essence of who I am. This is one of the things that basically just makes a huge distinction from who other people are and who you are. What is your unique X factor, if you will?
Yeah, I think we all have a few unique X
Mhm.
factors. So if you can mix those into your story, it just helps them remember you.
Yeah.
So the fact that I'm a mom of 7, that helps. The fact that I climbed 7 mountains, that helps. So I think I try to just do things that make you unique and stand out. So every time I speak, I talk about being a mom of 7.
Mhm.
Every time I speak, because I set a world record in mountaineering, I bring up the mountaineering aspect. And so that's just an easy way to stay in somebody's mind. They're like, "Oh, that mountain girl that has a whole bunch of kids." Like,
Yeah.
and
The
that just
mountain girl has
helps you
lots of kids.
become memorable.
Yeah. So as you are designing your speeches and wanting to make sure that people are getting value, what are ways that you've been able to see over the years that this is something that is extremely valuable, and maybe some of your previous speeches, you're like, oh, I thought that was valuable, but they didn't get value from it. Where have you been able to find either frameworks or systems that have consistently been able to deliver more and more value as you've developed your speaking ability?
Yeah. At some of the speeches I've done, we've done a word bank at the
Mhm.
end of the speech. And so then everybody on their phone types in a word that the speech represented for them. And so more often than not, the word acclimatizing comes up. So I know that story hits and relates to a lot of people. So it's very rare that I don't talk about the acclimatization rotations that it's required to climb big mountains. And
Mhm.
sometimes you need to climb down to climb up. And so when you hit that point of failure, or that frustration, or that obstacle, that doesn't mean stop. It
Mhm.
might mean come back down to base camp or the boardroom or the kitchen and reevaluate and see what you learned and what you need to do to continue to climb the mountain. And in mountaineering, that's called acclimatizing.
Mhm.
So doing those word banks at the end of your speeches, I think, are really awesome because everything's fresh in their mind and you know what story resonated the most. And so then okay, that story I need to always implement or always talk about and just keep refining.
Beautiful. That's a really fast way to get feedback as well, which I think is beautiful. I used to use those in my Chinese class that I would teach every once in a while. Like, hey, what was it that you liked the best out of this? And they throw up 1 or 2 words, and it makes a cute little thing. My daughter actually did one of those for me. So funny that you brought that up. She made one. Let's take it off my wall. Kind of like that, with all these different things that made her think of me.
That's
You
awesome.
can use them all over the place. So what's the one system that you like to use for that? Because I know there's tons of them. What's the one that you use the most
Oh,
as
I
far
don't
as a
even know the
tool?
name of it. I apologize.
Oh, no
That's
worries,
not
no
my
worries.
job. That's
That's
somebody
not your
else's
job,
job.
that's somebody
Yes.
else's. But there's a bunch out there. Word cloud was one that I used to use. There's a handful of them, but go find one that matches your speech and then say, "Hey, this is what I'm looking for." Great little insight. What are other ways that you've been able to either build reviews or rapport, feedback that has been really effective for you to level up your speaking ability?
Yeah. So at the end of my speech, a lot of times I will show a video of the Milky Way galaxy going over Everest Base Camp. It's one of those
Cool.
moments where when life's overwhelming, you look at that video and you're like, you know what? It can't be that bad. We're on this planet that circles the sun. You just feel like this speck. So then it
Mhm.
puts all your troubles into perspective. And I give that video away if they text the number, Everest to this number 33777, then they will get that video for free on their phone. And now they're in my system, and I will know everybody who came in that day came from that experience. And so then at the end, I can be like, I can send them an email and say like, hey, thank you for attending my speech. It was really great to connect with you. If you have a moment, would like to fill out some like a review or have any questions or anything else like that. And then you just get, again, feedback pretty quickly after the engagement. And that helps in so many ways.
That's beautiful. That's nuts and bolts, guys. That's coming from experience. I'm so glad you shared that. What's the system that allows you to do that? Is that through your CRM? Is that through a phone system? What is the way
Yeah,
that
so there's a
functionally?
program called Textiful, so
Okay.
TEXTIFUL.
Okay.
And that, I mean, I don't know what platforms it doesn't link with, but it links with ours for sure.
Okay, cool. So Textful. There's a cool tool, guys. Go check it out if that is something that would be helpful for you. I would definitely want to see what that could do for me. One of the other things that I've noticed with great speakers is they're always honing their message, but it's not just getting better so they look good. They're figuring out, how can I deliver this so that my audience can use the principles, use these core concepts to change their lives? How have you been able to take your message so you can transform your audience?
Yeah, so I think you start with writing the story, right? Because we love to learn by story or listen by story and understand by story. And when you're building that story, you have a story arc, and then there's certain lessons that you're trying to get them to pull from it. And so you learn to say, okay, sometimes I just talk in metaphor because
Mhm.
that's what they want me to do. And sometimes I'll talk in more of a workshop format, and I'll give them tips on things to do from the speech that we like relate to it. So it gives them a story to tie in the takeaway. And then the takeaway is something for them to sit with and be, okay, what does this look like in my life? What's my Everest, right? Or what is my next step? Because you climb a mountain one step at a time. You don't get to roll uphill, unfortunately. So can everybody take a minute and just write down what one goal they're chasing after and what's one thing they can do today? And you just start building that momentum for them and with them.
That's great. And one of the things I love about storytelling that you brought up was you're giving them a way to tie back their experiences to that story. And then they can say, oh, I remember when Jen shared that story about the hair dryer. This was the insight that I gained from that. Now they have two different connections. And when they remember one, they remember the other, because neurons that fire together wire together. We've heard this over and over. That's one of the reasons why I love storytelling. It's such a valuable asset as a speaker. What are some of the ways you've been able to increase your storytelling abilities, and why is it so important for you?
I mean, when you're on stage, it's such an honor, right? Like it's such a privilege to be on stage. You get to connect with so many people at the same time. And so for me, I'm very always trying to refine my speeches, always trying to like work the stories different. I actually talked at a mastermind that I was a participant in, and they had heard me speak somewhere else. They're like, we're gonna have Jen speak because you guys should hear this story. And so in that circumstance, because they were my peers, said, listen, I want you to listen to the story, but if you could give me feedback that would
Mm,
help me out, that would be an amazing gift back to me. And so I planted the seed before I delivered the story. I delivered the speech, and then I got really good feedback
mm,
on different things, or, oh, I really liked this, or this part I wish you would have gone into more detail on, or, like it's always this process of a beginner's mindset and being
mm.
willing to look at things from a fresh lens and ask for feedback.
That's beautiful. You have to ask for feedback if you want to improve. I think if you always say, oh, this is how it's always been done, that's really dangerous words in business and as a speaker. Every audience is different. I had a good friend, Daniel Hess, shout out to him, who shared this with me when I was a professional actor. Every single audience is unique. This might be the only time that they get to experience you, your story, or the musical that you're putting on, whatever it is you're performing on stage. So we need to honor them and give that gift of our very best, because we don't we don't have a guarantee that we're going to get another opportunity to be in front of that audience. And that makes it special. That's one of the things I love about speaking. So for you, what are ways that you've been able to give gifts to your audience?
Elaborate. What do you mean by
When I
gifts?
say a gift, I'm talking about an insight, a way that they can see the world in a new way, a way that they can apply what you've told them and like really grab onto a transformational experience. What are some of those gifts that you've given to your audience?
Yeah, I really am a big believer in accountability.
Mm.
So I share the story of when I came home to talk to my kids about climbing the 7-second summits. Before I could even get through the whole concept, they were claiming continents, and they each had a mountain that they were like, "This is my mountain, mom's gonna climb." And so for me, I'm like, well, I have to climb that mountain because otherwise that kid's gonna internalize it as something negative, right? And so that just gave me a really deep sense of why and a deep well to dig from when things got hard.
Mm.
So I believe accountability and anything that we're doing just really helps us when we want to say, just kidding. I was joking. I don't want to do that anymore. Um, One of my big takeaways is big mountains take big teams.
Mm.
I think a lot of times we try to set these huge goals as a single person. And when the
Yeah.
bigger the goal, the bigger the team. And so for me, whenever I'm like trying to build something, if I'm starting to run out of energy or trying to negotiate what I originally desired to do, I stop myself and say, okay, who, not how, who can I bring
Mm.
in to help make this possible? And so I think there's just like a lot of little stories all mixed in that I
Yeah.
try to give us sound bites to give people to take home.
I think that's a great way to think about giving a gift to your audience is what are the simple things? It could be words, it could be a concept that they can take away and use after your speech is done. Because they're not going to remember every single thing you say. They are
Right.
going to remember how you make them feel. They'll often remember those stories. And if you can have that story attached to a principle that they can apply in their life, suddenly your speech has transformed their life rather than, oh, that was a cool story, bro. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
very
yeah.
different.
Like a big one for me is people over peaks.
Mm.
And I feel like that one, when I get emails from people that attended the speeches or different things, that one gets sent to me a lot of, oh man, I like that people over peaks thing stands out in my mind. And now when I'm making decisions, I'm making sure am I putting my people first, not the objective.
That's such a simple one, and it's so good. People over peaks. We're talking about being a peak speaker. If you guys are just tuning in, this is so essential. We are not there to show off as a speaker. We're there to serve,
Mhm.
and it's such an honor. Like you said earlier, it is an honor to be on stage, and if we are serving the very best that we can, it's about the people in our audience, the people that hear us. And we want to make sure that our speeches are tailored, the stories are tailored to make sure that it will impact their life the very best that it can. So this is one of the things that I have seen many speakers do is they have a different business than their speaking business. And that's one of the reasons why they can move so fast. Talk to us about how you've built that economic engine of your financial services business and how that has helped you become a more proficient speaker.
Yes. I think it is so important to have that solid financial foundation so that when you're speaking, it truly isn't the place that needs to like feed the table. Right.
Mhm.
It just allows me to really be this is my play zone. This is my fun zone. This is my inspiration zone. Yes, it could pay the bills now, but in the beginning, it couldn't. And
Mhm.
so, because I had this foundation of that financial service practice, I didn't have to have the weight of that speech mean
Mhm.
so much to so many areas of my life. And so when we're starting out in the speaking field, I do think it helps to have revenue coming in from other areas that allow you that space to hire coaches, get mentors, do feedback, and do all the things that you need to do to become a great speaker, which is a lot of times repetition.
Yeah. I think that's a great insight, having financial flexibility and making it so that not your entire income is on that one speech. It takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful way to make sure that you've got your finances in order. And then also as you're building your financial engine of speaking, it's not the only stream of income. I know you've got multiple streams of income. Can you talk to us about what are some of the ways you've been able to monetize your message? I know you've
Yeah.
got your own book. What are other ways you've been able to monetize that message?
Yeah, so I've taken people on an expedition before.
Mm.
So if people want to go climb certain mountains, then I'll go do that with them, which is super fun. When companies, corporations, or different entities come into Park City, Utah for their retreats or masterminds or whatever, I've led guided hikes out into the mountains and done some stuff that way, which is fun because it's my physical component.
Mhm.
I've done a personal mastermind for people that I'm close with and have reached out for that. Then you have the speaking piece. The book was turned into a course. So there's just like a lot of little things that allow you to give people the message in different formats.
That's a great way to think about your message. You start out with the one thing, and then you're like, all right, how else can I serve people? Like you took this book, now you've got a course. Now you've got an experience on the mountain with Jenn. And maybe they're not going to be able to climb Mount Everest, but they're like, I can do, a hike.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
excellent. So let's talk about this. I know there's so many different ways to monetize your message, and you want to make sure that it lives in you and in your audience. What have been some of those like misfires, if you had any? I don't know. You're probably so good at this, you might not have had any misfires on that, but what are some of those challenges? You're like, oh man, I wish I would have known this before I did that. I thought that I was going to make money, and then I didn't. What were some of those hiccups
Yeah.
early
So
on?
one thing I've learned about myself is I am not a do-it-yourselfer. I'm
Mm,
just not. I don't have the bandwidth of time to be able to learn the things to
mm,
do the activity, especially when it comes to social media and marketing, because like writing the book is 10% of it. The rest of
yep.
it is marketing it and getting it out there and doing all those different pieces. When I first wrote the book, I thought the book was 90% and everything else was 10. 100% wrong. Now I know that if I was to write another book, I would have an entirely different strategy because I would be like, okay, the book's only 10%. It doesn't matter if I wrote it, if nobody's reading it, we need to get it out to the public. When it comes to course creation, like really having what's the on ramp? Are you doing paid ads? Are you just doing organic? Are you doing emails? Can you collaborate with people? There's so many ways to do things.
Mm.
So from now on, I've made a promise to myself. I am hiring somebody that's done the thing that I want to do and then helping them like recreate the engine under my brand instead of me trying to figure it all out because you miss things. Like it happened to us last week. I was busy. I wasn't paying attention. I hosted an event in Utah. They forgot to send an email the day of the event to remind people to show up. Okay, we had less participation than we did at the last event that had the email go out that reminded people to show up. Like there's systems in place for a
Mm.
reason and you need to utilize them to have success.
That's a great example. And not doing it all yourself, that takes a little bit of pressure off as well. I remember a story years ago. I think it was Dieter Uchtdorf that shared it, where there was all these young deacons that were trying to move a piano, and individually, there's no way they were able to do that. They were like 12-year-olds, but being able to pick up an entire piano because all of them were surrounding it, they lifted where they stood. They were able to move this massive piano and take it off the stage where individually it was impossible, but together they were able to do something they couldn't by themselves. That type of synergy is, I think, one of the things you're talking about. It's about
Yeah.
teamwork because
Yeah.
together everyone achieves more. I've heard that little team acronym before. I'm curious, how have you been able to be selective in your team? I know in one of the examples in your book, you talked about, oh, this team didn't work super well. And then other times you've had, man, this team was amazing.
Yeah.
How have you been able to select the right team members for the right missions?
It really starts with self-awareness. So
Mm,
to pick the right team, you need to know who you are and what you need to compensate with.
mhm,
Mountaineering is a very easy example to share this on because it's so visual. But when I'm climbing, when we did Mount Logan was 3 of us.
mhm.
Okay. I'm 115 pounds. There's no way I'm able to carry a 150-pound sled, right? Like
Right.
there's a limit to how much I can carry. So that means we don't get to put another small person on the team. I mean, I wish I could, maybe, I don't know, but it's just not an option. Like, we need to hire somebody that is 200 pounds, full of muscle strength, and can do the activity that we're doing, because they're going to have to carry more of the weight. And then
Mhm.
I'm going to have to compensate in other ways by maybe melting snow to make food, or to put up the tent, or to dig the hole because I'm like lower center of gravity. It's just those types of things. So to build a really good team, you first have to know who you are.
Mm. That's a great insight, really identifying who you are and your own skill set, and then also knowing where your weaknesses are. You're like, I can't technically lift a 150-pound sled up the side of this Mount Logan. I need someone that's jacked and juicy and able to get all the way to the top without that much challenge. So identifying what the needs are, I think that's really key.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is it that you found as a speaker that maybe at the beginning you weren't sure about, but now that you've done this long enough, you're like, oh, I didn't realize I needed this earlier? What are some of those
Yeah.
blinders that you had as a new speaker that you're like, wow, this is the thing that people need to know about?
Yeah, maybe a couple things. So
Okay.
first off, when I first spoke, I was like afraid to ask for things because I didn't want
Mhm.
to be a pain in the butt for the company. And so
Yeah.
if they would give me a handheld mic, I'd use a handheld mic. I deliver a speech much better when I don't have to hold the microphone,
Mm.
because I need a lavalier, because I love to use my hands and move around, and having that microphone just like keeps me a little more stiff and doesn't allow me to do my
Mm.
natural movements.
That makes
So
sense.
now I ask for a lavalier every single time. If they don't have one, I bring one and we plug it into their system, because I know at the end of the day, they want a fabulous end result. And that's how I'm going to give it to them. So
Mm.
understanding that your needs to deliver a great performance are allowed to be voiced, and it really helps everybody win. In
Yeah,
the
that's great.
beginning, I don't think I was so good at asking what they wanted from the speech, like what their main goals were, or what their issues were, or were there any ideal people in the crowd that I could poke at, or stories I should know that I could integrate into mine. Like, I just didn't ask those questions. And so as I've built experience, I'm much more deliberate on, okay, tell me somebody else, or can I talk to somebody else in your organization to get a different perspective, to make sure that I'm not just
Mm.
getting it from the marketing company, or that type of deal.
Perfect. This is so essential to make sure that you're serving your group the very best you can, asking the right questions. What are some of the other questions that you've been able to ask to tailor your speech? Because I think this is something that takes a lot of time and energy, and it all happens before your speech starts. So,
Yeah.
what are some of those other things
So
you've
if
been able
I'm
to do?
going on later on in the day and they have a lunch or a breakfast before, I ask if I can be a part of that.
Mm.
And the reason why is because then I get to sit at the table and meet some of the people in the room and get to know their story a little bit more. So if there's a chance to weave it in, I can. If I look out into the audience and I can see them, I'll land my eyes on them for a few seconds longer so that they feel seen by me. So
Mhm.
I really, again, I think it's that pre-work and that connection beforehand that allows the speech to land that much better once you're up there.
This is something I've noticed my friend Greg Kimball does really well, as he will get into the audience and connect with people way before he goes on stage. I
Yeah.
noticed this 2 weeks ago in Wyoming. He wrote his entire speech like 10 minutes beforehand because everything that he had was tailored to conversations he had during the event. He's like, I'm not trying to give you content. I'm trying to solve challenges that you guys have brought up. And that was it. I was like, that's a really interesting way to go about doing this. You're so prepared that you're like, this is something that will add value to that conversation. This is going to answer his question. This is going to answer his. That's almost like a Q&A session as a speech. And I thought that was a brilliant way to do it and tailor it. So I know you've done tons of different types of speeches. When you are starting out as a new speaker, what are some of the ways you've been able to interface with event coordinators and organizers that have made it so you've been able to book more and more gigs?
Yeah. So I like partnering. There was a
Mm.
new restaurant that opened up in Park City, and I talked to the restaurant owner and I said, "Are you going to host events here?" He's like, "Yeah, I am." I'm like, how about I do a free lunch speech? You offer the restaurant up for lunch, and we invite all the event planners that are local. And
Mm.
like, just say, like, oh, we want to introduce you to this space. We're going to make it be fun. Jen's going to talk. And so then I get introduced to those people. They get introduced to a new venue. The restaurant wins. I win. And they win because now they know who I am and they can book me for more speeches.
Oh, that's a brilliant way. Have you done that multiple times, or that was just the first time you did that? Because I think that's genius.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's not a ton of restaurants that are actually in the space of hosting events as well,
Yeah,
right? So it hasn't. I've done it twice, and both
that's
times it's
amazing.
been very beneficial.
I love that. That's such a cool strategy. New event centers and then connecting with all of the event planners. That's synergy. I love that. One of the other things that comes to mind for me is this is not something that happens super fast. Sometimes speakers can turn into a overnight sensation, but usually it takes years of practice. How long did it take you to become an overnight success?
Yeah, right, right. Well, the nice thing is like previously when I was in financial services, I would talk on stage then. And when I
Okay.
was a younger child, I was like in plays.
Oh,
So I
excellent.
think that part had always been there, which gives you a leg up and probably
Mhm.
shortens the other aspect of it. Um, but no, I think I'm still a in work in progress. Like I'm still improving and getting better, but it's definitely been years.
For sure. That's something I like to hear as well, is as you're getting in the groove and getting better and better, you're still leveling up. That's the whole purpose of my podcast, is how do we level up our mindset, skill set, and tool set when it comes to being a speaker, when it comes to being a provider, when it comes to making sure that we are being our very best in all different facets of life. So I'm curious, Jen, when you were brand new in this mountaineering and you had the idea to climb the 7-second summits, what was the process behind that? I know you brought it up in your book, but I would love to hear why you went after this specific world record.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna climb a mountain for my birthday. My son challenged me and elevated that to climbing Mount Everest.
Mm,
And then when I had to climb Mount Everest, I couldn't do that without a coach. So I called a coach, and then the coach sent me a book about becoming an uphill athlete. And in the front of the book was a story of a lady who got a Guinness World Record. And I was
mm,
like just ripe for the prime timing of that. I'm like, I want one of those. And he came back with this idea of the 7-second summits. So it's one of those things I think when you start leaning into something you want to do and you start taking those steps forward, doors open
mm.
and you can walk through there and then another door opens and another door opens and all of a sudden this goal goes from climbing a mountain to climbing Everest to setting a world record. And I think that's a lot for all of our goals. It's that evolution of saying yes.
Evolution is saying yes and recognizing that there's more opportunity out there.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. You read a book, you're like, oh, what if that was me that
Yeah.
set the world record? That's so cool. You create that possibility for yourself. And then the thing you brought up earlier, you have 7 kids and there's 7 continents and they like all dibsed one of them. That's such a charming way to hold you accountable to make sure every single one of those continents got hit. That's so good. Now, when you think about creating breakthroughs, you have this book called Break Proof. Will
Mhm.
you define what break proof means for you and how you've been able to embody this in your speaking career?
Yeah. So break proof doesn't mean you're not going to break. It means when you break, you have the proof of what's working, what's not working, what you need to do to continue to climb the mountain or maybe pivot if that's your story. So for me, I don't like, oh, it broke down and now it's terrible and everything's bad. To me, it's like, okay, it broke. What do we need to look at upstream to fix things? Or what did I learn so it doesn't break again? So that's why I
Mm,
combine the words into one because the break is the proof of what's working and what's not, and it gives you the direction to continue to climb.
beautiful. I love that. So, guys, go check out her book. It's phenomenal. I've been enjoying it. One of the things that came up earlier that I wanted to make sure we talk about is storytelling and how it's so important. Your story is the bridge to someone else's breakthrough. Can you talk about how you've been able to help maybe even one specific person or an organization create a breakthrough by sharing your story?
Um, yeah, a few flood to mind. I would say I had a friend that was looking at opening a restaurant, but kept getting in his own way.
Mm,
And he just kept it in his head, right? So I'm like,
yeah.
okay, well, let's write it down and let's really write down what's working for you and what's working against you. And then all the things that's working against you, let's look into those deeper and be like, is that the only truth?
Mm.
And so once we started writing all this stuff down and we looked at it in detail, it was the same excuse, like coming up as different little names, right? And
Okay.
all of a sudden we started breaking down. We're like, okay, there's the root cause is you just don't have enough financial backing so that if it doesn't work out, like everything doesn't blow up.
Mm.
And so I'm like, what's going to happen is over the next year, we're going to set aside this much money. And then once you have that much money set aside, now you can have this much runway to get the restaurant up and running. And that's going to feel like it's a possibility. So instead of this person like was ruminating on this idea for years, once we really put it on paper, mapped it out, figured out what the obstacle was, solved the problem of the obstacle, opened the restaurant, living his best life ever.
That's such a great example. Thank you. That's the power of having those blinders removed. A lot of times storytelling does that. And you get to live vicariously through other people. And that's
Oh,
something
it's
you've
the
done
best.
so well with your book, and being able to hear all these different stories is we get to live vicariously. Even if we never have the desire to climb Mount Everest, we can identify what mountains in our own life, what challenges or obstacles that we're facing, and we get to see what is it that's going to hold me back. Am I going to let my mindset, my skill set, my tool set hold me back, or am I going to climb that no matter what? It's that people over peaks thing. There
I
are
like it.
some objectives that we don't have to hit at this exact moment. Can you talk about when, I don't remember which exact mountain it was. You thought you were going to summit, you almost could see the top, and then you had to turn back
Yeah.
because this is that peaks or people over peaks. It's not about the summit. Can you talk about having to turn back, maybe on that first or maybe the second time you had to turn back and not summit so that you could go back up and get it the next time?
Yeah. I mean, I've had to turn around on 3 mountains and it's never fun
Mm,
because it's time, it's energy, it's all the things, it's failure, it's all that stuff. So, one key one was K2.
mhm.
I don't know why I thought I'd climb K2 the first time. It normally takes people 3 attempts, but I'm like, I'm going to do this. And when we were there that first year, there was a tragedy on my team. There was an avalanche, and
Mm,
that avalanche injured some people and actually took one person's life, which was something you read about. You don't expect it to happen to you. And when it does, you're not prepared, even though you think you've prepared because you know what happens. And at that moment, I had the opportunity to continue to climb with another team or go down and help mine.
mm,
And yeah, there's like a percentage of you that wants to continue and climb the other with another team and just get this done. But that's not the story or the life that I want to be known for. A person that climbs mountains at the expense of all things. And so when I really sat with myself, I said, no, I need to go take care of my team. Like the mountain will always be here, but
mhm,
my team's struggling right now. And this is the time to show up for them. So I climbed down and we took care of all the things that were involved with that, which is not fun.
mm.
And then I had to go back, right? And you have this horrible memory of the experience before, and you're just like, oh my goodness, this mountain kills 25% of the people that climb it. So doing it a second time is not the safest because the odds are not in your favor. But I needed to do it for the world record. And I really believed that goal was planted in me by a divine source. And so I was here to live out that goal.
Mm,
And I checked in with myself a lot of times to make sure that I wasn't operating from ego, but from purpose. And so when I went back the second time, I was made aware of a person that had been training that didn't quite have the assets to make it. So I talked to that person. I'm like, come on my team. And it allowed me to like really focus on that objective, not just my own objective,
mm.
which allowed it to be less heavy when I was there. So luckily, it took me 2 times. I summited K2 on July 22 of 2022. And that individual that was on my team became the first Pakistani female to stand on top of K2, one of the first
That's cool.
Muslim females to be on one of those environments and just show the world what they're capable of. And I love that story because it wasn't about me, right? But because I had the courage to go back and the courage to
Mm,
continue, and the strength to know it was the right thing to do. Like, so much came out of that experience. I can't even explain it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
The difference that I've seen from reading your book and just hearing you in person is sometimes it's not about just your goal. You get more energy by helping somebody else summit that mountain than you did on your original goal.
Oh,
I thought that was
100%.
such a great
Yes.
example. I was like, that hits the feels. It's so good. So,
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Once you've climbed the mountain, you realize, "Man, if I can help somebody else up this mountain and they get to feel what I get to feel, like,
yeah,
life is good."
for sure. Now, you had this quote that you said on many stages. I thought it was so profound. We don't get to choose when we die, but we do get to choose how we live. What does this quote mean to you, and why is it so important for your audiences?
Yeah. So I was in a horrific car crash. Around that same time, I lost a dear friend doing a run, and she was, like, slipped, hit her head, and didn't get to come home.
Mm,
And all of a sudden, I was like, "How? This isn't fair, right? Like, why does this happen? And why am I here and she's not?" And all this stuff, and that wasn't getting me anywhere. It was just making me more miserable and more confused. And so when I finally got to the point of metabolizing the traumas, I realized we don't get to choose when we die. Like, we really don't.
mm,
But we do get to choose how we live. And this life is such a gift. And there's so many amazing things that we can try and experience and explore and do and taste and
mm.
whatever. And so instead of me like living in this little box of this is what's okay and this is what's not, that we get to choose how we live statement just gives us so much permission to get out there and live.
Mm,
Like, do the thing. At some point, we're all going to die. Like, make sure that there's nothing left in the tank when you do.
mm. Leaving it on the field. I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I wanted to wrap up with this quote. I thought you really brought up so many different ways that mountaineering has helped you become a peak speaker, become a peak performer in multiple facets. Would you mind helping us understand why you say this? The climb might be steep, but the view from the top is only for those who endure the ascent.
Yeah. I was on the top of Mount Everest for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
trained 1,238 hours for those 10 minutes. And when they told me it was time to go down, I didn't want to go down. I'm like, "No, no, no. I earned this. Like, we are sitting up here and celebrating." And he's like, "No, you need to go down. Like, you're going to die. Like, your oxygen's going to run out." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So I had to start hiking down the mountain again. And in that moment, I just realized it is truly the journey and the struggle and the setbacks and the obstacles and the figuring it out and the
Mm,
teamwork and all the moments in between our summits that make up our lives. And so when you're in that struggle or that frustration point, like at some point, you're going to look back and be, "I did that. Like, I got over that. I came through that. That was something I overcame." And that's what gives the summit view so much significance
yeah.
because you earned it.
That's beautiful. You earn it, and sometimes it's just for a fleeting second. 10 minutes
Yes,
for
10 minutes.
thousands of hours of rehearsal and practice and all of that. So thank you for that insight. This has been a wonderful episode. I really appreciate all that you've done as a speaker, as an entrepreneur to put your message out there. Guys, go check out her book, Break Proof. It is phenomenal. Highly recommend it. How can people find you, the different courses that you have? Tell them a little bit, like, what is the one place you want to send them so that they know where to find you online?
Yeah. So definitely check out my website, jendrummond.com. And Jen is with two N's. You can meet me on Instagram at the Jenn Drummond, or I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit too. Send a DM, let me know what you're up to, and I'll be here to cheer you on.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. And as always, I like to say, keep leveling up your life. Find those things that will inspire you to take action today so that you're not going to be the same yesterday as you are today. You can continue to level up your life. God bless and have a wonderful rest of your day.